The first time she asked me, her voice didn't tremble, but mine did. The words hit me like a quiet storm I had been running from for years. "Why do you keep avoiding me?" she said, standing there on the porch with the same gentle eyes that once made everything feel safe. I felt my chest tighten, my hands curl into fists, and before I could stop myself, the truth slipped out like a wound reopening. I told her it was because she reminded me of him, and in that moment, the past I had buried came rushing back with a force I could no longer escape. If you believe in kindness, healing, and second chances, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, have you ever avoided someone because they reminded you of a painful memory? My name is Aaron, and this story began in a small town in Oregon where the sky always seemed too big for the kind of grief I carried. Back then, everything revolved around two people, my best friend Marcus and his mother, Evelyn. Marcus wasn't just a friend, he was the kind of person who made life feel lighter, like laughter had a permanent place in the world. He had this reckless optimism that annoyed teachers but inspired everyone else. And his mother, Evelyn, she was warmth personified. Her house always smelled like cinnamon and coffee, and she had this way of making you feel like you belonged, even when you didn't. I spent more time in their house than my own. My father worked long shifts and rarely spoke, and my mother had passed when I was younger, leaving behind a silence that echoed through every room. Evelyn filled that silence without ever trying to replace it. She didn't ask questions that hurt. She just existed in a way that made everything softer. But life has a way of breaking the things we trust most. It was a late autumn evening when everything changed. Marcus and I had been driving back from a football game, arguing about something trivial like music, laughing louder than the radio itself. The road was slick from rain, and the headlights blurred into streaks of white and gold. I remember the exact moment the car lost control, the tires slipping, Marcus shouting something I couldn't hear, and then the world spinning into chaos. When I woke up, the world had gone quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. It felt wrong. The hospital room smelled sterile, and every breath felt like it belonged to someone else. And then came the truth, delivered in a voice that tried to sound gentle but couldn't hide its weight. Marcus didn't survive. Grief doesn't come all at once. It creeps in, settles into your bones, and makes a home where joy used to live. For me, it wasn't just the loss of Marcus, it was the unbearable guilt that followed. I was in that car too. I walked away. He didn't. And Evelyn. I couldn't face her. At first, I told myself it was temporary. I just needed time. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into years. Every time I thought about visiting her, I felt this overwhelming pressure in my chest, like I was suffocating under the weight of everything I hadn't said. Because the truth was, it wasn't just Marcus I lost that night, it was the version of myself that could walk into her home without feeling like a fraud. I avoided the street where she lived. I ignored calls from people who mentioned her name. I built a life that carefully danced around anything that reminded me of that past. I moved to another city, started a job, met new people, but no matter how far I went, I couldn't outrun the memories. And then, one winter afternoon, years later, I saw her again. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something I could prepare for. I was back in town for work, walking through a grocery store, when I noticed her standing near the produce section. Time hadn't erased her warmth, but it had softened it into something quieter, something touched by sadness. Her hair had more gray in it, and her smile seemed smaller, like it carried a history of pain. I froze. For a moment, I considered turning around and leaving. It would have been easy. I had done it before, countless times. But something in me, maybe guilt, maybe longing, kept me rooted in place. She saw me. There was a flicker of surprise in her eyes, followed by something deeper, something I couldn't quite name. She walked toward me slowly, as if afraid I might disappear if she moved too fast. And then she asked the question I had spent years avoiding. Why do you keep avoiding me? The truth was right there, sitting heavy in my chest. I could have lied. I could have said I was busy, or that life got in the way. But something about her presence made lying feel impossible. So I told her the truth. I told her that every time I saw her, I saw Marcus. That her voice, her smile, the way she looked at me, it all reminded me of the person I lost. And I told her that it hurt too much, that I didn't know how to face that pain without falling apart. What I didn't expect was her response. She didn't look angry. She didn't look disappointed. Instead, she looked relieved. She told me she had been waiting for me to come back, not because she blamed me, but because she didn't want to lose me too. She said that when Marcus died, it felt like the world had taken everything from her in one cruel moment. And when I disappeared, it felt like losing him all over again. Her words hit harder than any guilt I had carried. Because in trying to protect myself from pain, I had unknowingly added to hers. We stood there in the middle of that grocery store, surrounded by ordinary life, having a conversation that felt anything but ordinary. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel everything I had been running from. She invited me to her house that day. I hesitated, of course. The idea of stepping back into that space felt overwhelming. But something inside me knew that if I walked away again, I might never find the courage to come back. So I said yes. Her house hadn't changed much. The same photographs lined the walls, the same furniture filled the rooms. But there was a stillness to it now, a quiet that felt heavier than before. And yet, there was also something comforting about being there again, like a piece of my past was waiting for me to reclaim it. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Marcus and I used to laugh and argue and dream about the future. And slowly, carefully, we began to talk. About Marcus. About the accident. About everything we had both been too afraid to say. She told me stories I had never heard, memories of Marcus as a child, moments that painted a fuller picture of the person he was. And in return, I shared my own memories, the small, everyday things that made him who he was to me. For the first time, Marcus didn't feel like a ghost haunting my past. He felt like a presence we were both honoring. And something began to change. The guilt that had once consumed me started to loosen its grip. Not because it disappeared, but because it was no longer something I carried alone. Evelyn didn't see me as a reminder of loss. She saw me as a connection to the son she loved. And I realized that maybe I didn't have to run anymore. Healing isn't a single moment. It's a series of small, fragile steps. And that day was just the beginning. I started visiting her more often. We shared meals, talked about life, and slowly rebuilt a connection that had been broken for far too long. There were still hard days. Moments when the memories felt too heavy, when the absence of Marcus was too loud to ignore. But those moments became easier to bear because they were shared. Because grief, when faced together, becomes something different. Something lighter. If this story is touching your heart, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Your support means more than you realize. And before we reach the end, I want to ask you something important. Please comment the word healing if you believe that even the deepest pain can eventually lead to something meaningful. The last time I stood on that porch, it felt different. The same place where I had once admitted my fear had now become a place of quiet understanding. Evelyn smiled at me, not with the sadness I had once feared, but with a warmth that felt genuine and whole. And I realized something I wish I had understood years earlier. Avoiding pain doesn't make it disappear. It only gives it more power. Facing it, sharing it, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable, that's where healing begins. As I walked away that day, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was carrying something forward. Not just the memory of Marcus, but the lessons his life, and his loss, had taught me. And for the first time in a long time, the past didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a part of me I could finally embrace. If this story moved you, don't forget to engage with the video, like, share, and subscribe, and tell me your thoughts below. Because sometimes, the stories we share are the ones that help us heal the most.